Chapter 4, Fire Hornets. Part 2 of 4. Infiltration used to be a rather easy affair for the herd. The bracelets they all wore rendered them invisible to humans and Mayans alike. Yet they were not the only ones inhabiting the pathogenics laboratory. They were the minority, but ponies of all three tribes moved freely about the underground facility in sufficient quantities that the 4 Americans would have found it extremely difficult to sneak around. At present, they were inside the loading bay where the ramp from the abandoned German depot led to. During her time in the CIA, Alexia had heard reports of her former trainees fighting against ponies who were allied with gangs, larger crime families, hostile foreign nationals, basically the standard fare for a field operative for the CIA. That was hardly a surprise to the Alicorn. If she were honest with herself, she would have fully expected ponies to be fighting other ponies just like humans have fought other humans for almost the entirety of the species' history. What troubled her though, were those that sided with the Mayans. It was something strictly kept within the agency, and even then it still damaged morale. It was even worse on Alexia, who felt each pony who served alongside the Mayans was a slap in the face to both her and Trinity. Her only hope was that they were being forced to work with the red-skinned humanoids. Knowing that if she brooded on it for very long she was liable to lose her temper, Toon decided to push that knowledge away to focus on her surroundings. The herd found the ramp that led deep into the earth was unwatched and snuck into the first chamber unchallenged or detected. It was roughly half the size of the depot above, yet was nearly devoid of sand. A fact Crimson was grateful for. The bay was filled with cargo trucks to the north and a single repair station to the south. The exit they arrived through was to the east and the loading platforms sat on the opposite side. The group was currently hiding inside the cargo bed of a covered truck on the north end with Conrad and Crimson keeping watch. Alexia sat towards the truck's cabin as she tried to cobble a plan together. Loki grinned madly at her laptop. "There's a Wi-Fi signal here. Oh Lottie, I can't believe they would actually put Wi-Fi down here. That's what you get for having fanatics in a hidden base. No one thinks to lock down system security." The network shark tested the waters, cackling manically as she found a possible entry point. "Yes, my darling, yes. Open yourself to me, for I am your goddess of the machine." Loki caught herself too late and glanced about to see scowling glares from her mates. She shrunk down with a sheepish grin. "Hee, sorry." Conrad was thankful that the chamber was more or less empty now that the day's shipments had been squared away and the work crews were wrapping things up. "Just keep your insanity to a low boil. Normality is overrated," the Green Mare replied as she dove back into her work. "If I were normal, I'd have gone insane long ago." "Aren't you already insane?" Crimson quipped. Loki abandoned her computer for the moment and wrapped a leg around Crimson and placed a hoof over her mouth for silence. "Hush now. It's hack-and cracking time, and I need all of the wubblub I can get to massage the door open for my charms to say hello to their new compadres. Ya get it, Wegget?" The Green Mare left the pale yellow pony exceedingly disturbed. As Loki returned to her computer happily humming a ditty, Anderson turned to her Alpha. "I think I need an adult." "You are an adult," Toon replied with a snorting chuckle while brushing off Loki's antics as she returned her attention to the tome she had summoned several minutes ago. The Dusk Guard section was open and Alexia made sure the golden glow of the text would not bleed outside of the covered truck by casting a darker version of her sunscreen around the book. The more magically inclined pony of the group shifted through the pages of militant illusion magic. Over a dozen were already earmarked, including the one she was searching for. "Okay, I know I saw that spell a few months ago when I was searching for. Yes, I think this is it." The entry she desired was tapped with a mote of her mana and it expanded from a single name in a long list to a full text document in the image of a scroll. Several pictures accompanied the text, showing the mental calculations needed to weave the spell without the need for a diagram. Alexia couldn't help but read the words in Twilight Sparkle's voice. "Here I will go into the specifics of the plain sight spell. This is of course, short for the old adage, hidden in plain sight. The spell operates on a simple principle: if some pony is not looking for something, that pony can stumble onto whatever or whoever is trying to get around stealthily. However, if ponies are actively looking for a person or object, they can often overlook it when it's right in front of their face. In a way, the Hydra in the throne room has a better chance of hiding by sitting on the throne itself when the whole royal guard is hunting it, than a parasprite in a mouse hole being happened upon by a hawk if both were using this spell. This is a bit of a stretch for many to trust, and honestly I don't blame you. However, it's the audacity of the tactic that warrants attention. After all, if even we don't want to try it, then those who wish harm against Equestria wouldn't think to try and counter it. Plan sight works by passively tricking the mind of all those who would see or hear the caster by thinking he or she should be doing whatever it is that they are doing. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, as I will explain in great detail shortly. Say for example, you are using this spell and hostile troopers are trying to find you. By using this spell, you can reenact the entire play of Marbeth as you act your way from your hiding spot and away to safety. The soldiers will still see you acting out a one-pony play, of course, but will assume you are some pony who belongs there and should be doing whatever it is that you're doing, acting out a scene in this case. However, it does not need to be singing in order to make the spell function. Simply be as conspicuous as possible and it will strengthen the effect of the spell. Remember, it is the audacious nature of such a defense that will catch many by surprise and will not think to shield themselves from this style of perception manipulation. Plain sight does have its drawbacks, of course. Even when using a ward against anti-magic fields, the fields will still strip away any effects plain sight will have on anyone. In addition, a strong mind can see past the illusion, and if they call attention to you, then even the unaware will see you for what you are. So be mindful of that as you infiltrate unfriendly territory. Alexia scanned the rest of the text with fervid interest, but she ran into one big snag. Damn! This affects the caster and personal effects only. She scowled at the text for a few seconds until a thought occurred to her. It's not fully tested, but now would be a good of a time as any to give this new array of mine a field trial. Assuming I can get the damn thing entered into the harness correctly. She turned to her companions. Okay guys, I have a plan. Just hear me out while I try to write my patented aura diagram into the computer here. A brief explanation of both the spell and the aura diagram later, the silver alicorn was receiving 2 looks of complete bewilderment and one of complete and utter joy. Conrad was the first to recover his voice. That has got to be the craziest thing I have ever heard outside of Loki. There's no way this will work. I have to agree, Crimson agreed. How in blazes is parading around like the Macy's Day Parade supposed to keep us hidden? Magic or not, it seems highly illogical. Toon never got a chance to answer because Loki did it for her. Not at all, my good mare. Magic is energy waiting to be converted into some other form of energy, right? And the brain works by bioelectrical and chemical reactions. Given the right formula, magic can trick the brain into thinking that the illogical is logical. Drugs do that sort of thing quite easily and all the time. I've seen ponies get just as drunk off beer and just as high off pot as any human has, and I bet the same will be true for the Red Menace. Alexia couldn't help but nod at that. That's a clear way to put it without going too far into the technical details. At any rate, I should be done with this aura diagram shortly. Which does what exactly? The alicorn, like her mentor, loved to talk about magic. So it was with an exuberant grin that she explained herself to the stallion. It's a personal project I designed myself. There are plenty of spells that are area of effects, and others that only affect a target or just the caster. But there's nothing that lets you change the nature of these spells. That's mostly because if you try to turn, say, a love spell intended for a single person into a mass love spell, you need to change the formula entirely, almost to the point where the 2 different versions are barely similar anymore in their original structure. This aura diagram bypasses that entirely by reflecting the spell's effect to everyone within 5 feet of me at the cost of some instability and almost quintuple the mana cost. Crimson remembered Alexia saying she had plenty of mana to spare, but concern still washed over her. Are you sure that's wise? Alexia puffed her chest out a bit. If there's anything I'm good at, it's magic. And thanks to certain events of the past, I am practically made of mana. The cost is something I'll try to tone down later. A few more minutes and Alexia deemed the holographic diagram to be in good shape. Okay, let's give this a spin. The pale chalk-white holographic circle moved from a foot in front of her face to being centered around her chest. The array itself was dizzyingly complicated with lines that crisscrossed to form a weave of lines that had runes of varying sizes. However, the reason behind the busy design was that it was extreme hollow, and was more akin to a 4-inch thick ring than a real diagram. The array was static and made it look like she was wearing a 2-dimensional skirt that had been pulled up to the top of her abdomen. It also sat at a 20-degree tilt with the top part of the array leaning away from her head. Crimson gave it a sour look. Now I know I'm a medic, not a spell weaver. But wouldn't your normal walking gait break the array, thus rendering it useless? Alexia hummed. It would actually. I guess I didn't really think this one through. She cast a simple spell to test and sure enough, every time she moved her leg through the array it failed. The resulting feedback was only a mild discomfort due to the simplicity of the incantation. The alicorn stopped casting and flared her wings. Then she took the 2 pens and dragged the array to sit half a foot above her spine and in between her wings. She also resized the array to fit. There. I'll have to mark each of you for the aura to recognize you, but it will increase the range by 15 feet, hopefully. Loki clapped her hooves together and had a Mad Hatter grin plastered over her face. Perfect. And I know just how to cause the perfect commotion. She went back to her laptop and tapped a few commands into the network. Now I can't glean the true purpose of this place's research from here. I need to get down to the lower levels and get direct access to the closed network. These morons who thought 12345 was a good password for the Wi-Fi at least had the sense to protect themselves that much. This smacks of non-IT people making the security policies. Conrad was appalled. 12345? I wouldn't even never mind. Loki wrote a few more commands before raising her left hoof in the air in a dramatic fashion. She took a deep breath to savor the moment, as if it was an act of extreme patience to let the moment hang. Then with what everyone else thought was a rather anticlimactic motion, she tapped the enter button and started giggling manically. The others waited for something to happen for a minute, but nothing seemed to occur as Loki watched the laptop screen execute a rapid-fire chain of commands into the network. Crimson looked over her fellow Earth pony's shoulder to see the command prompt blitz lines of text she couldn't even read because it was going too fast. What did you do? The pale yellow mare's voice was laced with dread. Alex needs a distraction, I gave us one. Loki said with glee as she popped her ear out of the covered truck and angled her ear to the loading bays. A 5-toned klaxon resounded throughout the garage. A voice akin to a screeching cat clawing a chalkboard spoke out in Equish. Alert! No less than 30 ponies have been reported to be breaking standards of conduct regulations by singing and dancing blasphemous music in the hallways. This is a blatant disregard for civil conduct and an outright attack against the gods. All personnel are to find these individuals and detain them without delay. Conrad was stunned, but not enough where he couldn't speak his surprise at the mare who was clipping the laptop to her back while leaving it open with a song on a timer start. Singing and dancing? I would ask if you're mad, but I already know the answer. Hey, we need a conspicuous distraction, so there we go. Now take a sip of water and warm up your vocal cords, guys. We're putting on a show. Toon barely had enough time to unsummon the tome before Loki grabbed her by the forelegs and threw her out of the truck. Just follow my lead, guys. Alexia considered herself fortunate that she landed on all fours and that Crimson and Conrad found themselves doing the same moments later. Loki jumped up and over the alicorn to land in front of her. It was only with refined presence of mind that Alexia thought to activate the plain sight. Fortunately, it interacted with the array as planned, and the 5 workers around the loading bay paid them no more than a passing glance as they laughed about the announcement that would repeat itself every 20 seconds. Although because of the enchantment on the harnesses, they only saw a unicorn mare and 3 earth stallions. Ordinarily they would have seen the reverse, but the untested aura array was not inert to that enchantment. It was a side effect Toon had no knowledge of, and none of them could see for themselves because they could pierce the illusion. Loki shakily tried to stand up on her hind legs so she could act like a composer with her right hoof being the baton. I know you guys can feel the instinctual need to sing. Conrad wanted to duck back behind cover, but the workers seemed to be ignoring them for the moment. I try to ignore it whenever possible. Ditto, Crimson replied. Alexia was sweating profusely at the prospect of her aura losing stability without her knowing if it was about to happen. I don't really feel comfortable doing anything more than humming in public. But singing would strengthen the spell's influence. It was all the verification Loki needed. Then it looks like we all have an instinct that demands satisfaction. With her trademark less than sane toothy grin, Loki waved her hoof back and forth in time with her words. A1, A2, A1 2 3. As if the mare had timed it perfectly, a fast-playing piano opened up from her laptop with a surprisingly loud speaker. Loki dropped back to all fours and started marching to the server room. She started singing the main lead with as much soul and enthusiasm that would have made Jim Croce nod in approval. Whoa! Bad, bad Leroy Brown! The others chased after the singing mare. Well, the south side of Chicago is the baddest part of town. Loki jumped the 4-foot ledge up into the storeroom with the herd hot on her heels. The public address system kept repeating the declaration to find all of the singing ponies. So with Alexia's spell in effect, the workers around the herd thought nothing of the 4 ponies with one of them singing her heart out. Now Leroy more than trouble. You see he stand 'bout 6'4". They trotted out of the storeroom and into the main thoroughfare to the elevator. All the men just call him Sir. Loki's memory of the map she pulled from the network let her know she needed to go down 4 floors. She started skipping and bobbing her head to the beat. And he's bad, bad Leroy Brown. Alexia felt it worse than the others. A spring in her step and an urge to join in tickled her badly in the back of her mind. Crimson tried to ignore the cursory stares they received from the passing workers or guards, but even she was nodding her head to the beat. Badder than old King Kong, and meaner than a junkyard dog. Loki threw herself into the song, finally exercising that nagging need to sing. Everyone in the herd knew the song, and the other mares couldn't stop themselves from joining in as Loki's chorus. He's bad. He's bad. They sang in unison. Bad Leroy Brown. The baddest man in the whole damn town. Conrad looked at the mares with growing concern. More so for himself as he struggled not to join them. Badder than old King Kong, and meaner than a junkyard dog. Loki started her solo right as they were arriving at the elevators and pressed the call button. Now Leroy he a gambler, and he likes his fancy clothes. And he liked to wave his diamond rings under everybody's nose. The elevator arrived, revealing it was large enough for 20 people to squeeze inside. So they found themselves cramming inside with 5 Mayans and 3 other ponies. Alexia despised the fact that these fellow ponies were working alongside the Mayans. Yet she did not let that stop her from joining in Loki's next chorus. And oh, that girl looked nice. Loki went back into her solo as the elevator filled up and started its descent. Well, he cast his eyes upon her and the trouble soon began. And Leroy Brown had learned a lesson bout a messin' with the wife of a jealous man. The song came to an end right as the doors opened and Loki's playlist moved right on to the next selection. Shockingly, the elevator, while depositing them on the correct floor, opened straight into the cafeteria's dinner crowd. The surrounding patrons gave the 4 ponies quizzical looks, Alexia most of all with her horn aglow. She elbows Crimson and whispered, "Crimmy, start singing. But this song is degrading. These people will degrade our flesh if we don't keep singing," Alexia hissed back. Shoring up her courage and dignity, Crimson started singing the first verse. "Finally I get to teach a whole lesson all by myself. And I'm going to teach something relevant, something modern, the internet." Conrad's resistance at hearing the intro crumbled to dust. Loki just had to pick that song. As the group followed Loki towards the other side of the cafeteria, Crimson kept singing. The internet is really great. The stallion's resistance faltered for a moment and he belted out two musical words. For porn. I've got a fast connection so I don't have to wait. For porn. A few lines of the song went by as the herd managed to exit the northwestern exit, garnering no more than a few disinterested glances. The klaxons warned of singing equines again. This time the herd was trotting directly underneath one of the loudspeakers and the 10 Mayans and ponies listened to the announcement and then paid the quartet no mind. Loki happily pointed towards the server room while Crimson was fully in the swing of the song. Hold on a second. The herd nearly complied with the assumed order until Anderson continued the line. Now I know for a fact that you, Mage, play video games and mock people on forums. That's correct. When I have time anyway, she added silently. And Samurai, you watch sports and have an unhealthy fixation on the San Francisco obituaries. Sure. Hopefully I'll see my father on that list one day. And Green Bean, you know exactly what you do, Crimson sang accusingly. Yes I do. Conrad couldn't help but tap Crimson with the tip of his wing. Oh but Doc, what do you think they do after? As Anderson sang her disgust, Loki turned the corner and spotted the server room. The herd started galloping towards the room, passing 15 Mayans along the way. Loki skidded to a halt in front of the keycard scanner and pulled a cord from her harness. One end was a USB mail connector and a rewritable keycard in the other. The internet is for. She slid it into her laptop's USB port and waited for the computer to recognize it. The internet is for, everyone sang merrily besides Crimson. The laptop proclaimed the card was ready and the hacker slid it through the scanner. The virus was implanted into the scanner and quickly caused an overload and burned it out, opening the door. The internet is for porn. The herd bolted inside with Conrad going last and pushed the door shut behind him by pressing his back to it while shouting the ending verse. Yet. Alexia's aura flickered as the harness spat a few sparks as the heavy monoload was too much and some of the critical circuitry burned out, causing the hologram to vanish. This made the 3 system administrators, 2 Mayans and 1 Earth pony, to go from giving them a passing glance to growing alarm. How the hell you get in here? The pastel purple stallion barked. Crimson was the first to respond. Mage, pancake maneuver. The command snapped Toon out of her mild stupor and switched her mana from maintaining the illusion, which had shrunk to just herself, to grappling each administrator in her kinesis and slamming them once against the rocky ceiling and a second time against the stone floor. Without hesitation, Conrad ran over and delivered a hard kick to each one to make sure none of them would ever get up again. End of Part 2.